Alright, good evening ladies, welcome back to Compound Interesting. In today's video I want to discuss possibly the most exciting thing that has happened in crypto for a long time. And that of course is Bitcoin NFTs, believe it or not. Also known as Bitcoin Ordinals, Bitcoin Inscriptions. I'm going to explain to you how these work on a very basic, not too technological level, so don't worry. And we're going to address the total addressable market for Bitcoin NFTs, if they're likely to go up, how to get involved, should you get involved, etc, etc. So if that sounds interesting, make sure to stick around. So before we dive into how Bitcoin Ordinals or Bitcoin NFTs work, I should mention that Galaxy Digital just came out with a report saying they believe the base case for Bitcoin Ordinals market cap is $5 billion within 2 years. So it's going from 0 to 5 billion. So that's huge growth. So we'll dive into that in a little bit more detail. Also the fact that when Ethereum NFTs came onto Ethereum, the reason that they went up so much in price, or they were so valuable, is because there were so many people who are rich from investing in Ethereum who had loads of Ethereum to buy these NFTs. Now, what is the one asset where there's even more rich people, the one asset in crypto where there's even more rich people than Ethereum, who have even bigger bags than Ethereum? Of course, it's Bitcoin. So the hope is that all these Bitcoin whales with hundreds or thousands of Bitcoin are going to be aping into the inscription narrative or whatever. Another bullish point for Ordinals is that there's no real strong marketplace for these. It takes a little bit of technical knowledge to be able to trade these Ordinals, and basically there's not a huge amount of people in it. So once this all becomes very easy, then potentially Bitcoin Ordinals will boom. So the idea is potentially to get in ahead of the masses. So going through the extra steps, the difficulty of actually getting an Ordinal at this time could reward you in the future, potentially, and that's obviously not financial advice whatsoever. Now let's just quickly explain how Bitcoin Ordinals work. So Bitcoin Ordinals are kind of like Bitcoin NFTs, except there are a few key differences between Ethereum NFTs and Bitcoin Ordinals. So the way you could imagine an Ordinal is, or an inscription, a Bitcoin inscription, you say I had a $100 bill and I got it signed by a celebrity. I got it signed by LeBron James. Now my $100 bill has some extra value on top of it, so it's not 100% fungible. There's a signature on this $100 bill that makes it stand out from the other $100 bills. In the exact same way, you can put an inscription on a single Satoshi. So Satoshi is the smallest divisible unit of Bitcoin. So there's 100 million Satoshis per Bitcoin. So you can put any inscription onto a Satoshi. So the inscription is essentially like an image. It can be any sort of data file, a song, text, etc, etc, and you can inscribe this onto a single Satoshi. So that's the inscription, what a Bitcoin inscription is. And the Bitcoin ordinal system is just a way to actually order every single Satoshi. So the ordinal theory works by being able to see, okay, it basically tracks every single Satoshi across time, from the very point that it was mined all the way to where it is now, from every transaction that it's gone through. So that's the way they can order. Someone, Casey, I forget his name, worked out this way to actually find out when a single Satoshi was mined and be able to track it all throughout its lifetime. So there's a way to actually say, okay, this ordinal is ordinal number 1 and this ordinal is ordinal number 4 billion or something. That's essentially the difference between an inscription and an ordinal. Ordinal is just like the numbering system, and the inscription itself is kind of the NFT that lives. But you need the ordinal system to be able to actually have the NFTs to say this is the inscription on this particular ordinal. Otherwise, like, there would be no difference. Like, I could put the same inscription on 1,000 different Satoshis and you would have no idea which one is the legitimate one that I wanted. Or someone could just copy CryptoPunk onto thousands of different Satoshis, so there would be no way to find out which one is the legitimate CryptoPunk, for example. So the other key difference between Ethereum NFTs and Bitcoin Ordinals, which is kind of an advantage for Bitcoin Ordinals, is that the data is stored directly on chain. Like, it's directly stored in the Bitcoin blockchain, inscribed onto the Satoshi, whereas with pretty much all 99% of Ethereum NFTs, like the JPEGs, those images are just linked to an IPFS file. So it's not actually the image itself isn't inscribed directly onto the blockchain or directly onto the NFT. The NFT is just a token which lives on top of Ethereum rather than being an inscription directly into the Ethereum coin, like it is with Bitcoin inscriptions. So that's one key difference between the two. So here you can see the growth in inscriptions over the last 2 months since they became possible, since Bitcoin Ordinals became possible, and the majority of which are images, and then there's some text, people writing, 123.bitcoin, so text like Ethereum name service, but it's not at all like Ethereum name service, so don't get suckered into that. Anyway, so it's obviously extremely early for Bitcoin Ordinals. It probably has the same kind of feel and energy of like investing in early Ethereum NFTs in 2017 or buying Bitcoin in 2011. Like, it's extremely early, and who knows if this will actually be something valuable or useful in the future. I think it probably will, but maybe it could get to the same level of adoption as Ethereum NFTs. So it's just like there's an early energy and vibe in Bitcoin Ordinals at the moment, and there's pretty much no good infrastructure to buy, sell, trade and store Bitcoin NFTs yet. It also means you have to be extremely careful if you want to get involved in the Bitcoin Ordinal space. Now there's a few ways you can do it. The more advanced way, where you can buy, sell, trade Bitcoin NFTs or Bitcoin Ordinals, is by actually downloading a Bitcoin node and running a full Bitcoin node. And I'm sure that's probably a little bit too advanced for 99% of viewers. And the other way is to download Sparrow Wallet, and Sparrow Wallet allows you to receive Bitcoin Ordinals, but you can't actually trade them yet using the Sparrow Wallet, so you can't sell them. So there's no way, like if you receive a Bitcoin Ordinal, you have a Satoshi in your wallet, then one single Satoshi, and the danger is if you try and send someone Bitcoin from the same wallet, you're gonna accidentally send the Bitcoin Ordinal, because the wallet is not going to be able to interpret that this Satoshi has something inscribed on top of it. It's just going to spend the Bitcoin that's in your wallet for transaction fees, or as the Bitcoin that you actually wanted to send. So that's the problem with sending Bitcoin Ordinals. But if you have a full node, you can actually send them. I've left a link in the description if you want to download the Sparrow Wallet, and I'll link some further research and further instructions on how to run a Bitcoin node or download the Sparrow Wallet and use and buy and sell and trade Bitcoin Ordinals. But let's discuss what Bitcoin Ordinals are already there, what we should be looking out for coming out in the next few months. Okay, so there's two main projects that are coming out on Bitcoin Ordinals soon, which will be the blue chips of Bitcoin Ordinals in my opinion. And there's already a few decent collections out there. There's like Bitcoin Punks and stuff like that, but that's just like a rip off Ethereum NFTs. So it just doesn't feel like such a good risk reward for me. But there's some upcoming collections that would be very interesting, although probably very expensive. And the reason they're expensive is because, well, we'll get into that. But the two collections I'd be interested in are, that I know of, are Taproot Wizards, the first one. So that's by Udi Wertheimer. Maybe you've seen him on Twitter before, but he was a Bitcoin maxi, but he's just like a rational Bitcoin enthusiast. He's very interested in Bitcoin, but doesn't describe himself as a maxi, and he's obviously going to be all over this. Whereas a lot of the Bitcoin maxis hate this whole ordinal stuff that's coming onto Bitcoin, or else they're switching from like, oh, NFTs are dumb, to, oh wait, now NFTs are great because they're on Bitcoin. Udi is definitely a thought leader in the Bitcoin space, so I do think this collection will do very well once it comes out. And be very careful, people are making inscriptions of Taproot Wizards already on the Bitcoin blockchain. However, it hasn't been released yet, so don't get scammed, don't buy an incorrect Taproot Wizard. The other collection, probably even bigger news, is Yuga Labs is dropping a 300 piece inscription on the Bitcoin blockchain called 12-fold. So you can see some of the art here from Yuga Labs. So I really like this art. There's only going to be 300 of them, and I'll explain why so the collection sizes are much smaller. But just Yuga Labs have said that this is not tied to any other Yuga Labs projects. It won't be tied to Bored Ape Yacht Club, Other Side, etc. It's a completely standalone art project, and it'll be auctioned off, and there's only 300. So I'd say these will go for probably, I don't know, at least one Bitcoin each when they get auctioned off, in my opinion. So they'll probably be worth hundreds of thousands, I think, once they do get auctioned off. After they get auctioned off, I think they would be in that price range because there's only 300 of them, so I think they will be very valuable. Same with Taproot wizards. I'd say the Taproot wizards will be there's going to be, I think, 2,000 Taproot wizards, and they'll probably go for 1 or 2 Bitcoin as well. I think the 12-hole project probably is going to go for multiples of Bitcoin, in my personal opinion. So yeah, obviously quite expensive collections. Not everyone wants to spend 1 whole Bitcoin or multiples of Bitcoin on some sort of like experimental Bitcoin NFT. But if you do have that kind of spare change hanging around, I'd say these projects would be the most interesting, in my opinion. Okay, so why will the collection sizes be much smaller on Bitcoin than they are on Ethereum or Solana, etc.? Well, the reason being is that it's much more expensive to inscribe stuff on the Bitcoin blockchain than it is to mint a project on Ethereum. For example, to inscribe a 10,000 collection on Bitcoin would cost you about 10 Bitcoin or $238,000 to inscribe a 10k collection. So obviously, if you're launching a project and you want to launch a 10k project, to have 238 grand sitting around to be able to launch that project, yeah, like it's a much higher risk than on Ethereum. People can just mint it for a few dollars. So this collection sizes will be smaller, but I also think the trading velocity will be higher on Bitcoin because there's much lower fees on Bitcoin to actually transact on Bitcoin. Is much cheaper than Ethereum because Ethereum has a lot of demand for gas space or for block space, whereas Bitcoin, the fees are much cheaper to transact, which is kind of ironic. So it's much more expensive to inscribe on Bitcoin, but much cheaper to send and receive on Bitcoin as opposed to Ethereum. So what does that mean? It means probably collection sizes will be smaller. Fine art could be stored on Bitcoin, important files, important art collections, stuff like that, and there will be potentially higher trading velocity because their fees will be much less. This chart is just showing the total fees on Bitcoin, and we can see that already inscription fees are making a bit of a dent in the total fees absorbed by miners. So this is good for the Bitcoin blockchain in the fact that it's increasing transaction fees on Bitcoin, which helps with the decentralization. It helps the miners and helps with security of Bitcoin, although obviously higher fees also for people. Some Bitcoin maxis are like, why Bitcoin is just supposed to be money, it's not supposed to be for NFTs and stuff. I don't want to have to pay extra in fees to trade my money or to buy to send and receive my money because these idiots are buying stupid JPEGs on Bitcoin. So obviously some Bitcoin maxis hate this new system that's being built on top of blockchain or on top of Bitcoin because it's increasing the fees. But increasing the fees also helps miners in the long run because transaction fees are going to need to be high in the future as the block reward from mining reduces. If you don't know what I'm talking about, don't worry. But it in the long run, Ordinals will be good for Bitcoin, in my opinion. So there's no real outstanding projects already built on Bitcoin, in my opinion, from what I've found, because it's so early. However, I am following some pages like Ordinals Hub and some other Ordinal Twitter pages because I think, like, just staying in the loop, staying on top of this stuff, I might just go and buy some random Bitcoin Ordinal just to get used to it, just to see what it's like, just to experiment and to be early in this new potential wave of adoption that will be coming to Bitcoin Ordinals. Being early in this space, obviously it could just fizzle out and go nowhere, but obviously the upside is absolutely outstanding. Galaxy Digital reckon it's going to go to $5 billion in 2 years in their base case, which is like half the market cap of Ethereum NFTs, which are roughly, I think, $10 or $20 billion in market value. So Bitcoin NFTs getting into the same order of magnitude is very plausible, in my opinion. They think that there's so few on Bitcoin Ordinals just yet. Like, the only way you could buy one potentially is a low inscription number, because that's potentially more rare. So if you get like one of the first few thousand inscriptions on the Bitcoin Ordinal system, maybe that would be the safest play you could do, but that's probably quite expensive. The worry with Bitcoin Ordinals is that it's going to impact the fungibility of Bitcoin. like when I mentioned that if I signed this dollar bill, a $100 bill, maybe it's not going to be the same now as any other $100 bill because it has this signature on it, so it's not really as fungible as it was. But when you take into account that there's 100 million satoshis per Bitcoin, and an inscription just lives on one of those satoshis, so Galaxy Digital did a little bit of research on that, and they estimate that it would take 238 years to inscribe 5 Bitcoin, or 500 million ordinals, or 500 million inscriptions, which is equal to 5 Bitcoin. So it would take 238 years just to have 5 Bitcoin that were now non-fungible. So not really a huge issue when you put it like that. So I will be keeping in the loop on Bitcoin ordinals. I might try and buy one, might try and set it up just to try and be early. And if I do, I will do a follow-up video on what I found, what projects I'm interested in buying, all that kind of stuff. So if you want to see that, make sure you're subscribed, hit the like if you